The modern names of Scottish islands stem from two main influences. There are a large number of names that derive from the Scottish Gaelic language in the Hebrides and Firth of Clyde. In the Northern Isles, most place names have a Norse origin. There are also some island place names that originate from three other influences, including a limited number that are essentially English language names, a few that are of Brittonic origin, and some of an unknown origin that may represent a pre-Celtic language. These islands have all been occupied by the speakers of at least three, and in many cases four or more languages since the Iron Age. Many of the names of these islands have more than one possible meaning as a result. Scotland has over 790 offshore islands, most of which are to be found in four main groups: Shetland, Orkney, and the Hebrides, subdivided into the Inner Hebrides and Outer Hebrides. There are also clusters of islands in the Firth of Clyde, Firth of Forth, and Solway Firth, and numerous small islands within the many bodies of fresh water in Scotland, including Loch Lomond and Loch Maree. Main languages. Early languages. As humans have lived on the islands of Scotland since at least Mesolithic times, it is clear that pre-modern languages must have been used, and by extension names for the islands, that have been lost to history. Proto-Celtic is the presumed ancestor language of all the known Celtic languages. Proponents of the controversial Vasconic substratum theory suggest that many Western European languages contain remnants of an even older language, family of Vasconic languages, of which Basque is the only surviving member. This proposal was originally made by the German linguist Theo Veneman, but has been rejected by other linguists. A small number of island names may contain elements of such an early Celtic or pre-Celtic language, but no certain knowledge of any pre-Pictish language exists anywhere in Scotland. Celtic languages. British Brittonic was an ancient pre-Celtic language spoken in Britain. It is a form of Insular Celtic which is descended from Proto-Celtic, the hypothetical parent language that many linguistics believe had already begun to diverge into separate dialects or languages in the first half of the first millennium BC. By the 6th century AD, scholars of early insular history often begin to talk about four geographically separate forms of British, Welsh, Breton, Cornish, and the now extinct Cumbric language. These are collectively known as the Brittonic languages. It is clear that whenever place names are recorded at an early date as having been transposed from a form of pre-Celtic into Gaelic, that this occurred prior to the transformation from Old British into modern Welsh. There are numerous Scottish place names with Brittonic roots, although the number of island names involved is relatively small. The Pictish language offers considerable difficulties. It is a term used for the language thought to have been spoken by the Picts, the people of northern and central Scotland in the early Middle Ages. It may have been a fifth branch of Brittonic. Kenneth H. Jackson thought that the evidence is weak, but Catherine Forsyth disagreed with his argument. The idea that a distinct Pictish language was perceived at some point is attested clearly in Bede's early 8th century Historia Ecclesiastica Gentis Anglorum, which names it as distinct from both Old Welsh and Old Gaelic. However, there is virtually no direct attestation of Pictish short of the names of people found on monuments in the lands controlled by the Picts, the area north of the Forth Clyde line in the early Middle Ages. Many of these monuments include elaborate carved symbols, but an understanding of the significance has so far proved as elusive as interpretation of the few written fragments, which have been described as resembling an odd sort of gibberish. gibberish. Nonetheless, there is significant indirect place name evidence for the Picts' use of Brittonic pre-Celtic. The term Brittonic is sometimes used to refer to the Proto-Pictish language spoken in this area during the Iron Age. Given the paucity of knowledge about the Pictish language, it may be assumed that islands' names with pre-Celtic affiliations in the southern Hebrides and Firths of Clyde and Forth are Brittonic, and those to the north and west are of Pictish origin. This Gaelic language arrived via Ireland due to the growing influence of the Kingdom of Dalriada from the 6th century onwards. It is still spoken in parts of the Scottish Highlands and the Hebrides, and in Scottish cities by some communities. It was formerly spoken over a far wider area than today, even in the recent past. Scottish Gaelic, along with modern Manx and Irish, are descended from Middle Irish, a derivative of Old Irish, which is descended in turn from Primitive Irish. This, the oldest known form of the Gaelic languages, which is known only from fragments, mostly personal names, inscribed on stone in the Offham alphabet in Ireland and Western Britain up to about the 6th century. The Burla Rigard is a Gaelic-based cant of the Scottish travelling community. Norse and Norn. Old Norse is a North Germanic language that was spoken by inhabitants of Scandinavia and of their overseas settlements during the Viking Age. Until about 1300, its influence on Scots island names is considerable due to the development of both the earldom of Orkney and the kingdom of the Isles, which resulted in almost all of the inhabitable islands of Scotland coming under Norse control from the 9th to 13th centuries. Norn is an extinct North Germanic language that developed from Old Norse and was spoken in Shetland, Orkney and possibly Caithness. Together with Faroese, Icelandic and modern Norwegian, it belongs to the West Scandinavian group. Very little written evidence of the language has survived, and as a result it is not possible to distinguish any island names that may be Norn rather than Old Norse. After the Northern Isles were pledged to Scotland by Norway in the 15th century, the early Scottish earls spoke Gaelic when the majority of the subjects spoke Norn, and both of these languages were then replaced by insular Scots English and Scots English is a West Germanic language, the modern variant of which is generally dated from about 1550. The related Scots language, sometimes regarded as a variety of English, has regional and historic importance in Scotland. It is officially recognised as autochthonous language under the European Charter for Regional and Minority Languages. It is a language variety historically spoken in Lowland Scotland and parts of Ulster. English is a West Germanic language, the modern variant of which is generally dated from about 1550. Although they are the dominant languages in modern Scotland, the presence of both Scots and English in island names is limited. Pre-Celtic remnants. There are 3 island names in Shetland of unknown and possibly pre-Celtic origin: Fetla, Unst and Yell. The earliest recorded forms of these 3 names to carry Norse meanings. Fetla is the plural of fetal and means shoulder straps. Omstr is cornstack, and Iala is from al, meaning deep furrow. However, these descriptions are hardly obvious ones as island names and are probably adaptations of a pre-Norse language. This may have been Pictish, but there is no clear evidence for this. The roots of several of the Hebrides may also have a pre-Celtic origin. Indeed, the name comes from Hebode, recorded by Ptolemy via the misreading Hebudes, and may itself have a pre-Celtic root. Mull was recorded by Ptolemy as Malios, possibly meaning lofty isle, although it is pre-Gaelic in origin. In Norse times it became Myl. The 7th century abbot of Iona Adomnan records Skol as Colossus and Tyre as Ithaca, which may be pre-Celtic names. Islay as Ptolemy's Epidion, the use of the p hinting at a Brittonic or Pictish tribal name. Adomnan refers to the island as Ilia and occurs in early Irish records as Island Isil in Old Norse. The root is not Gaelic and of unknown origin. The etymology of sky is complex and may also include a pre-Celtic root. Louis is Yodus in Old Norse, and although various suggestions have been made as to a Norse meaning, the name is not of Gaelic origin and the Norse credentials are questionable. The origin of Uist is similarly unclear. Rum may be from the Old Norse Romoi for wide island, or Gaelic Idrua meaning Isle of the Ridge, although MacIntyre is unequivocal that it is a pre-Gaelic name and unclear. Sale is probably a pre-Gaelic name, although a case has been made for a Norse derivation. The etymology of Arran is also obscure. Haswell Smith offers a Brittonic derivation and a meaning of high place. The Accalum Narsenuric describes Arran as being between Alba and Cruden land, although there is possible confusion in the annals between the meaning of Cruden to refer to the Picts, the Crufni of Ireland, and the Welsh equivalent of Prydain to refer to Britain as a whole. In support of the Vasconic substratum hypothesis, Veneman notes the recurrence of the element Arran, meaning valley, in names like Val d'Aran, Arundel, or Arundel. In early Irish literature, Arran is Aru, and Watson notes there are similar names in Wales but suggests it may be pre-Celtic. Brittonic and Pictish names. Several of the islands of the Clyde have possible Brittonic roots. In addition to Arran, Bute may have a British root, and Great and Little Cumbrae both certainly have. Inchkeith in the Firth of Forth is recorded as Insidaketh in the 12th century life of St. Sir. The name may derive from Innishythe or Inniscoit, and both MacIntyre and Watson suggest that the root is the Brittonic coed. The derivation would appear to be assumed rather than attested, and the modern form is Innishythe. Caer in Welsh means a stone-girt fort, and was especially applied to Roman campsites. This is the root of Cramond Island in the Forth, with Caramond meaning the fort on the Armand River. The island of Thrive on the River Dee in Dumfries and Galloway, Scotland, takes its name from Celtic Treff, meaning homestead. It is assumed that Pictish names must once have predominated in the northern Inner Hebrides, Outer Hebrides, Orkney and Shetland, although the historical record is sparse. For example, Hunter states that in relation to King Bridead I of the Picts in the 6th century, as for Shetland, Orkney, Skye and the Western Isles, their inhabitants, most of whom appear to have been Pictish in culture and speech at this time, are likely to have regarded Bridead as a fairly distant presence. Quote, however, the place names that existed prior to the 9th century have been all but obliterated by the incoming Norse-speaking Gaelgaels. Orkney is pre-Norse in origin and Pictish, as may be the uninhabited Orkney Island named Damsey, meaning Lady's Isle. Remarkably few Pictish place names of any kind can be identified in Orkney and Shetland, although some apparently Norse names may be adaptations of earlier Pictish ones. There are various Offham inscriptions such as on the Lunasting stone found in Shetland that have been claimed as representing Pictish, or perhaps even a precursor language. In the 14th century, John of Forden also records the name of Inchcombe as Eumonia, a name of likely Brittonic origin. Norse names. From some point before 900 until the 14th century, both Shetland and Orkney became Norse societies. The Norse also dominated the Hebrides and the islands of the Clyde for much of the same period, although their influence was much weaker from the 13th century onwards. According to O'Caraine, when and how the Vikings conquered and occupied the isles is unknown, perhaps unknowable, although from 700 1193 onwards, repeated raids by Vikings on the British Isles are recorded. All the islands of Britain were devastated in 794, with Iona being sacked in 802 and 806. As a result, most of the island names in Orkney and Shetland have Norse names, and many in the Hebrides are Gaelic transformations of the original Norse, with the Norse ending oi or a for island becoming aigh in Gaelic and then I in modern Scots English. Gaelic influence. Perhaps surprisingly, Shetland may have a Gaelic root. The name Isins Chat is referred to in early Irish literature, and it is just possible that this forms part of the later Norse name Haltland, but the influence of this language in the toponymy of the Northern Isles is slight. No Gaelic-derived island names, and indeed only two Celtic words exist in the language of modern Orcadians: iper from Iba, meaning a midden slurry, and kiro from Caira, used to describe a small sheep in the North Isles. The Hebrides remain the stronghold of the modern Gaeltacht, and unsurprisingly this language has had a significant influence on the islands. There, it has been argued that the Norse impact on the onomasticon only applied to the islands north of Arden near Merkin, and that original Gaelic place names predominate to the south. However, recent research suggests that the obliteration of pre-Norse names throughout the Hebrides was almost total, and Gaelic-derived place names on the southern islands are of post-Norse origin. There are also examples of island names that were originally Gaelic but have become completely replaced. For example, Ad Omnan records Sania, Elena, Oman, and Oedicha in the Inner Hebrides, which are of unknown location, and these names must have passed out of usage in the Norse era. One of the complexities is that an island such as Rona may have had a Celtic name that was replaced by a similar-sounding Norse name, but then reverted to an essentially Gaelic name with a Norse ending. Scots and English names. In the context of the Northern Isles, it should be borne in mind that Old Norse is a dead language, and that as a result names of Old Norse origin exist only as loan words in the Scots language. Nonetheless, if we distinguish between names of obviously Norse origin and those with a significant Scots element, the great majority are in the former camp. Muckle, meaning large or big, is one of few Scots words in the island names of the Nordre Yar, and appears in Muckle Row and Muckle Flugger in Shetland, and Muckle Green Home and Muckle Skerry in Orkney. Many small islets and skerries have Scots or insular Scots names, such as Dar Skerries, Odar Rockness, and Dar Buddlestane in Shetland, and Kirk Rocks in Orkney. Great Cumbrae and Little Cumbrae are English, Brittonic in derivation, and there are other examples of the use of great and little, such as Great Bernera and Rice Little, which are English, Gaelic, and Norse English respectively. The informal use of Isle of is commonplace, although only the Isle of Ewe, the Isle of May, and Isle Martin of the largest Scottish islands use this nomenclature in a formal sense. Island also occurs, as in Island Macascan and Mealista Island, although both islands are also known by the Gaelic names of Ellen Macascan and Ellen Mahilasta. Holy Island off Arran is an entirely English name, as is the collective Small Isles. Ailsa Craig is also known as Paddy's Milestone. Big Scare in the Solway Firth is an English-Norse combination, the second word coming from scare, a scary. Some smaller islets and skerries have English names such as Barrel of Butter and the Old Man of Hoy in Orkney, and Maiden Island and Bottle Island in the Inner Hebrides. The Norse often gave animal names to islands, and these have been transferred into English in, for example, the calf of Flotter and horse of Copensey. Brother Isle is an anglicization of Brytheroy, meaning Broad Beach Island. The Norse Holmar, meaning a small and rounded islet, has become home in English, and there are numerous examples of this use, including Cornholm, Thieves' Home, and Little Home. Summary of inhabited islands. Etymological details for all inhabited islands and some larger uninhabited ones are provided at Hebrides, Northern Isles, Islands of the Clyde and Islands of the Forth. Based on these tables, for the inhabited offshore islands of Scotland the following results apply, excluding Scots English qualifiers such as muckle, east, little, etc.